In today's video, I want to share 5 crochet tools that I can't live without. Now, of course, I can live without these things, but I would prefer not to, let's put it that way. Along with these, I do have some honorable mentions that I want to talk about, mainly because I get asked about this all the time, and I always love hearing about what other crocheters are using. And at the very end of the video, I have something that I want to get, but I want your opinion on it. So let's dive in. Let's start with the obvious one, which is my crochet hook, and particularly a 4mm crochet hook. I have small hands and weak wrists, and so I have found that an ergonomic handle works really well for me, as well as the tapered tip. Even if the yarn requires a larger or smaller hook, I always tend to grab my 4mm. Now this is just a personal preference, but I think it's really interesting how we all kind of gravitate towards a certain size yarn and hook. And for me, that's the 4mm, and usually a worsted weight or sport weight yarn. You'll notice in the majority of my videos that I use a Tulip hook. And I absolutely love these hooks, but I need to let you in on a little secret. I don't use them just because of the brand, but because of the name. Years ago when they were first recommended to me, I had just received my dream car, my Mini Cooper, and I'd named her Tulip because tulips represent true love. I know, really sappy and cheesy, but still. So soon after that, when a viewer recommended these hooks to me, I was really excited because they were ergonomic hooks and they were named Tulip. So yes, these are amazing hooks and I do recommend them, but they also have sentimental value. But another brand that I absolutely love that has the ergonomic handle is the Clover Amour hooks. Can't recommend these enough. Stitch markers. I am a huge fan of using stitch markers. I get asked a lot about the ones I like to use, and they're called the Crochet Dude stitch markers, and I believe they're made by Loops and Threads. Now the reasons I like these ones so much is because I can use them with one hand. Now I know what you're thinking, because they don't lock in place, they're going to come out very easily. And you're not wrong on that. I have had issues with it where they do slip out, especially if I'm using a finer yarn weight. But even if I do have issues with them sometimes, these are the ones that I always reach for when I'm looking for a stitch marker. So even though I really love those, I'm always on the lookout for other stitch markers, and recently I grabbed myself some of these Easy Lock by Clover. Again, Clover, such a great brand. And although they do lock very easily in place, they don't go into the clasp very easily with just one hand. Now this is a size medium, so I'm wondering if maybe the size large might work a bit better for using with just one hand. If you have the large size and you can use it with one hand, please let me know. Here are 2 things, but I'm going to count them as one because they have to do with measuring, and that's a scale and a tape measure. I did a video recently all about how to measure your yarn when you're trying to figure out how much yarn you need for a project. And to do that, all you need is an inexpensive kitchen scale. This is a very basic scale. I got mine for about $14 to $15, but you can find them as low as $10. I would recommend that you grab one that does weigh in grams, and that's because in my experience I've found that that's a little bit more accurate than weighing in ounces. And even more importantly than my kitchen scale is my little tape measure. And this is just an inexpensive fabric one that I got at my local superstore. On the one side it measures in inches, and then on the other side it measures in centimeters. The reason I love this so much is because I can get a much more accurate chain count when I'm working on a project. And this is what I always recommend in the comments when I'm asked how many chains do you need for a certain size blanket. That's so hard to answer when I don't know what kind of hook you're using or yarn you're using. And even if I did, I would still recommend a tape measure because we all have different tensions. So as long as you know the multiple in the pattern, you can create your chain to the length or width that you want, and it's going to be so much more accurate. Tapestry needles or darning needles. I think I've tried everything, but my absolute favorite, especially for weaving in ends, are the Susan Bates finishing needles. Now yes, these are plastic, but they are so useful, and I come back to them again and again and again. I like to use a pointy needle, but usually the eye of the needle is fairly shallow compared to the yarn that I want to use for it, so it does get a bit finicky for me. So with finishing needles, I don't have to worry about any of that because the eye of the needle is the entire needle. These bigger ones are really useful if you're using very chunky yarn or the Bernat blanket yarn. But most of the time I'm just using these smaller ones. There is a size that comes between this yellow one and this dark blue one. It's a light blue color and I use that the most, and as you can see I don't have it here because I've lost it. So I do need to order another pack. Now, of course, the only drawback to these is they are plastic, so they're not ideal for every project. And I personally like using a regular tapestry needle when I'm sewing pieces together because it just feels better. But for weaving in ends, I always use these. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find these in stores. I do have to order them on Amazon. I think I had a commenter once say that she found them at Joann's Fabrics. I don't have one of those nearby, so I couldn't tell you. But again, I just rely on Amazon. I get asked all the time how I like to block my pieces, and my system is really simple. I just like to use regular pins with a foam mat. I have two sets. I use a 4-pack that's interlocking, and you can get more to make the space bigger, but this is where the can't live without comes in. For the same price that I spent for 4 blocks in the craft aisle, I was able to get 28 squares, the same size, mind you, 12 by 12, for $15. And I got these in the children's section at my local superstore. So although I do love my 4-pack with the lined squares, if you're wanting to block a really big project, then I definitely recommend that you check out your children's department and see if you can get a mat. While we're on the subject of blocking, another tool that I really love is my steamer. You can use the steamer on your iron, but I have this steamer that I bought for traveling, and I find that I use it more often now for when I'm blocking blankets primarily. When it's just little squares, I just squirt with water, but when I'm working on a blanket, I like to use the steamer. This is just an inexpensive Conair that I got at my local superstore, and that's really all you need. You don't need anything fancy for this. I absolutely love my iPad. I find this to be really useful because I can order patterns online, save it to my iPad, and then easily import it into Procreate to mark off as I'm working on something. Or if I'm designing a pattern, something like a C2C project, I can make the design within the app Procreate, and I get asked about this a lot. Now, I've done a whole video all about this that I'll go ahead and link to right here, as well as in the description box. Back at Christmas time, I was recommending different tools or gifts to buy for crocheters, and this was on that list. And since then, I've started using one, and this one has 3 different colors and 3 different strengths of lighting. I'm really surprised at how well it works. It's lightweight around the neck and really does help to define those stitches, especially when you're working on dark yarn. Now, I'm not necessarily recommending that you have to get a neck light, but I do recommend it if you're working a lot with dark yarns in the evenings. It really does work well for that. But another option is always just grabbing yourself some daylight bulbs. As soon as I started using daylight bulbs in the evenings when I was crocheting, that made all the difference in the world. For storing my yarn, I like to use fabric bins. I'm a lazy organizer, so I find that these work really well for me because I can just plop all of the same brands or types of yarn into the same bin. And I also use these to store my different works in progress. This way I can just keep everything in one place, and then I can plop it on the bed or the couch, and then when I'm done, just place it back on the shelf. I got these at my local hardware store, but I'm sure you can find them pretty much anywhere, but I'll be sure to leave some links in the description box below. I could go on, but I'm going to stop there. The one thing that I am wanting to purchase, and I wanted your opinion on this, is a hand massager. Hand stretches and exercises are working really well, but my hands are still really tired at the end of the day, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a hand massager? So if you've tried one of these, please let me know in the comments which brand you use or which brand you like, or if you got one and you weren't satisfied. I'd love to know that too. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and please let me know in the comments what is your can't live without crochet tool. It is so fun to know about what others are using, and I'd really love to know what you're interested in. And it doesn't even have to be a tool. Maybe it's Netflix or your favorite wine. I don't know. Just let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.